Hey everybody, it's Leroy from Leroy Gaming, and today I'm bringing you another build for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Today, I'm sharing with you my Immortal Zeus Thunderbolt Hydra Summons build. Yes, it's a mouthful, but I feel like it describes this build perfectly. This is basically a build on my previous Summoner build, kind of optimized, and the idea here is you got a really tanky caster. You can make him extra tanky at the expense of some DPS. I'll mention that in the gear section. But optimally, you're going to be really leaning into a bunch of hydras for damage. But in addition, you are going to also lean heavily into shooting thunderbolts and also using your gun to a certain degree to do consistent damage and burst as need be. So extreme clear speed, extreme damage against all types of content. We got all of your elements covered as well. It's going to be covered in the gear section. So stick around, check out this amazing build. Doesn't rely on any exploits or anything else. So this should hopefully, barring any general nerfs, be something you can rely on for a while. As with my previous videos, you can check out the timestamps below. You can check out and look at the hero stat allocations or hero points. You can look at the skill tree. I'll go over all of that, as well as full gear information. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed this build, drop a like. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, especially if you have any recommendations or thoughts. And if you want to see more content about Tiny Tina and Wonderland, as well as looter shooters, make sure to subscribe. Now let's go ahead and take a look at everything you need to know about my Immortal Zeus Thunderbolt Hydra Summons build. All right, guys, first we're going to look at hero points, hero stats. So, as with my previous video talking about my Summoner build, I made a mistake on this. So on my actual background, I chose one that gave a major boost to attunement. You do not need attunement for this build because you're going to be getting ambihextrous as a skill. So you're going to be having 2 spells. So ignore that. The only reason I have any attunement here is because of my mythic rank that are account bound. So what you want to max out is going to be intelligence. You want your spell cooldown as high as possible, spamming that as much as possible, as we're going to have multiple spells and you're going to want to be utilizing that for multiple synergies. Now also, what makes this build immortal, the Immortal Zeus, is, as the name goes, is the ability to basically on demand regen your ward shielding as well as your health. And both of those are going to be percentage based. So in order to survive on the hardest difficulties, I really love pumping Constitution. I do not run into a problem of being able to do enough damage to beat the hardest content. But sometimes you can get surprised and you can get a lot of burst damage when you're talking about Chaos 20 with maximum curses. If you're running low difficulties, you're not going to feel like you need Constitution, but I'm telling you, high end, I recommend maxing that out. And then the remainder is kind of up to you. You can, for me, I didn't have as much crit chance, so I pumped crit chance from dexterity. If you have good gear with high crit chance, or if you want to go glass cannon and avoid Constitution, then you can split between dexterity and strength. Getting crit damage high is a really good end goal. If you can get reasonably good crit chance already and you feel like you're critting a lot, then maxing out strength is not a bad idea. You should put Village Idiot for this at the beginning. It's going to give you an extra 8 points to give you a head start on that. You will lose some intelligence, so you get -3 to intelligence, but it's okay. Even though you're going to max out earlier, it should cap out obviously -3 points, lower than what you see here, and then go to strength, and then potentially go Constitution, or again go Dex as a last resort if you're really min-maxing. All right, next let's talk about skill tree. We are going to be using ambihextrous from Spell Shot. But we're going to be starting out when we level in the Graveborn. Leveling up, I didn't really use either of these skills as much. Technically, Reaper of Bones, I utilized a little bit more, got more effectiveness out of it, but you're going to be about level 17 or 18, I believe, when you get Ambihextrous unlocked. As far as your levels go, I started with 3 out of 3 Faithful, and then what I did is I put 2 out of 5 into Essence of Drain to unlock Harvest, and then I immediately went and got 3 out of 3 Harvest. Then I went and got 2 out of 3 on the Sanguine Sacrament to just help with a little bit of healing. This unlocked this area. At that point, I went ahead and picked up Dark Hydra, went 3 out of 3 on this. I did go and pick up 1 Dread Covenant for survival. And then my whole thing is, as I leveled up, anytime I need to go to the next tier, I would dump a point into Essence Drain to get that cooldown again a little bit more. Then you're going to want to go ahead and pick up Ascension, get 3 out of 3 on this. You're going to put, I do like Punishment in this case because you're going to be multicasting. So multicasting will give you multi chances at Hellish Blast. That's only because we're doing a spell shot combination there. At that point, when we go down here to Blast Gas, we are going to get to a point where we want to get 1 point into Lord of Edge. This is again for survival and for a little extra DPS here potentially if your hit points go down. Then you want just enough into Blast Gasp to unlock Morheim's Blessing. So we're not going to leave this finished up yet. You're going to get 1 into Morheim's Blessing, and then we want to actually jump into Spellweaver right away. Once we're in Spellweaver, we're going to go ahead and put 3 out of 3 into Magic Bullet, so converting some of that magic or spell damage that we're going to get, especially from Ascension, to go into our gun damage. Then we're going to go ahead and do 2 out of 5 into Spell Sniper to get the next tier open here. We're going to go ahead and put 1 point into Mage Armor, 4 out of 5 into Font of Mana, and then you're going to go ahead and put 1 to Glass Cannon. Very important here. Obviously, we love the spell cooldown. We don't care about the action skill. This synergy here is kind of a big deal. Whenever you gain a stack of Spell Weaving, you get 10% of your ward back. This is important because we get Spell Weaving not only when we cast spells, but also when we reload. And when we throw our Thunderbolts, we're going to reload constantly. So you can basically on demand get 10% of your ward back. This is also important because you're not going to be able to get ward damage back naturally. So that's because you're going to get Glass Cannon. And so the only way to get ward back is through this Mage Armor interaction. But instead you get extra 30% spell power, which is just a little bit under 25% gun damage as well, which is not bad. And then you want to go back here and just put enough points into Font of Mana and Spell Sniper to unlock high thread count. And then at that point you want to finish up by going back to Graveborn and just finish out the points where you see fit. You want to get Blast Gasp. You're only going to be able to get it 4 out of 5 here. Now in a nutshell, when we talk about synergies, once you're at max level, at level 40, you're going to be, for DPS, really synergizing Faithful Thralls. You're going to be synergizing Dark Hydra, your Ascension element, as well as your spell weaving stacks, and to a certain degree, magic bolts as well. The way the synergy works is you're going to be getting a bunch of Faithful Thralls. So for every companion, so whether it's summoned by your guns, by your spells, or just the companion you're going to get, your Demi-Lich companion, they're going to count here. And for every one, you're going to initially have plus 9% damage dealt. Now, is it important to note, your damage dealt, flat damage dealt, impacts everything. So it'll impact your spell casting damage, your companion damage, as far as your Demi-Lich in this case goes as well, and your gun damage. Eventually, when you get better gear that we're going to talk about, you'll hopefully be able to get 6 out of 3 and it'll be 18%. So this is why we're going to want as many companions. This also ties into Dark Hydra and why we want to get 5 out of 3 out of this. So this will give you 5 more Hydras. You're going to easily be able to get 10 or more pets on here. So just using 10 pets as an example, or companions, sorry if we're calling them pets. 10 companions equals 180% damage dealt, which again buffs you, whether it's your spells or your gun damage. Also going to buff your Demi-Lich. So very, very powerful. So that's the first synergy there. Now, your spell power is going to be a big synergy as well in 2 different ways. You're going to be getting buffs to spell synergy through Ascension. Again, upwards of 60% spell damage. We're going to get 10 stacks here, which is a big deal. Also, any spell power from spell weaving. So spell weaving, eventually you're going to get 8 stacks of this. Every time you cast a spell or reload, you're going to get a stack of this. So at 8 stacks, it's going to give you 80% extra spell power. So 80 plus 60 is 140. And 45% of that spell power there is going to be turned into gun damage. So that's important. So, let's say if I had rounded it up to 50%, of 140, that's what, 70%. So it's a little less than that, but like 60, 65%. So extra 60, 65% gun damage is nothing to sneeze about based off this passive. So your gun damage is going to be reasonable as well. The second synergy is about survival here. So we're talking about regenning health and shielding. Your health is going to be regen through this Sanguine Sacrament. So again, you're going to be spamming your spells. You have 2 spells. Every time you cast one of them, it's going to heal you 30% of your max health over basically 2 seconds. So if you do that back to back, you'll have 60% of your health back, which is amazing. And then if you want to get your shields back, it's anytime you reload or cast a spell. So obviously you cast your 2 spells, that's 20%. But then if you're throwing the Thunderbolts, as I show in this video, every time you reload, you're also going to get a stack of spell weaving, and that's going to give you an extra 10%. So you can very quickly in combat get your spell shielding together. You're going to have really good cooldowns on your spells. So, and they're going to hit really hard as well, because you're going to have this nice 60% spell crit hit chance. And your spell in particular are going to be your hydras that you summon through the spells. They will crit more, and they're going to do more damage based off your spell power scaling. So that's really, really good. You're going to have pretty decent spell cooldown here, 25% from Essence Drain, an additional 20% from Font of Mana. That's 45% before you even talk about any other external bonuses. So you're going to be casting spells a lot. So those are your main synergies. All right, let's talk about gear. And this has changed a bit and been upgraded since we last talked. Now we'll start with the jewelry and armor. Starting with the basics are going to be the rings. I could still use these as an upgrade. Now, I now use a combination of SMGs and pistols. So for kind of sustained damage without forced reloads, I use SMGs more. And I use pistols when I'm going to spam my Thunderbolt throws because they have the better reload time. But we do want to make sure we have companion damage on both our rings. I really like dealing damage to a boss, increased effectiveness by 100%. Bosses are the main things that you're going to need to burst on. Badasses also. But bosses are the ones you want to make sure you min-max this. Most normal things you'll kill so easily. You're not going to need the extra bonuses. Now this is by no means perfect. A spell crit hit chance is not bad. SMG's critical hit damage isn't bad. But again, you're going to want crit damage on these, which would be pretty helpful. Reload speed would also be not bad as well for pistols, if you can get it. And on here, unfortunately on this one, I don't have it optimal. Ability crit hit damage does nothing. Anything with ability damage is unrelated in this build pretty much, for the most part. Cooldown abilities doesn't really count at all. Spell crit hit damage is not bad. But basically, just get the very best 2 companion damage rings that you can find. Now, the shield, I picked this particular Blazing Body Rune Shield. So for this, when you kill an enemy, you restore 15% of your max health. That's another way you heal, synergizing with your healing from spells. And you deal 20% bonus fire damage for a short duration. Remember, it says bonus fire damage, so this does not require your gun or anything else to have fire damage ready to get this. So if you're doing 100 damage, that's just physical damage or lightning damage. This will give you an additional 20%. So 20 damage, that is fire damage per shot, for example. So that's really, really good, and will also impact any of your party members that also have one form or another of a rune body armor. So this doesn't have the highest capacity, but it really helps with survival and that damage boost. Now, if you don't have this, you can get, this is kind of my second favorite one. This is just an epic volatile armor I got. Notice it's got almost 8,000 capacity. Again, we don't care about recharge delay and recharge rate because we can't actually recharge. We get this because it's super high, the shielding here. And also I really like the bonuses here. So we got regenerates 5% of your max health per second while ward is full. So if your health does drop at some point, you get your shielding up. This will automatically heal up. Also, when your health is below 50%, you regenerate 5% max health per second, and you do an extra 30% damage. So if you do dip into health before you recover, this will also help you recover your health in addition to your other forms of healing and give you that nice little boost of health. So this is kind of my second favorite setup here if you don't have that legendary version. Now for that initial armor that I mentioned, You can, of course, go for that same regen enchant if you get it. That didn't pop up on here for me. Instead, I have on spellcast increase fire damage by 30% for 5 seconds. So this is useful to basically combo that 20% bonus fire damage. Also, if you use a gun that has fire damage, it's going to help stack with that. There's lots of good guns that have fire damage. When I use my Thunderbolt tosses, I use a pistol that has fire damage on it. So that's synergized. That's the reason I used it. If you happen to use like a lightning gun as your primary, then you would want to have lightning on here or whatever, fill in the blank, whatever element you want. That's a really nice one to have. Now, when it comes to your armor, this is big. There is no legendary I found that's been able to roll this well yet. What we care about here is finding an epic that has these very specific skill stones. Notice it is a Graveborn Spore Warden power combo. So the Spore Warden power is going to be wasted, but the Graveborn is going to be helpful. So with this, as we look at our skills, this is what allows us to get 6 out of 3. So this gives us 18% per companion in overall damage instead of 9. And it also gives us 2 extra hydras. I found the opposite as well. You can have 3 hydras here and 2 of this, but this is the superior version that I have. Now, as far as additional stats, companion damage is amazing. The fact that it was the highest is great. Movement speed is good for survival. Doesn't really increase DPS here for us, but it's useful. Melee damage is useless. So anything else related to companion damage or health, or even gun damage or pistol refresh rate or reload rate, SMG damage, anything like that would be decent here as well if you have it. But again, I'm not too picky. As long as you got the skill sets, this is what you want as your optimal piece of armor here. Now let's talk about neck pieces. And so what I found to be my favorite neck piece so far is this one right here, the Undying Frenzied Wrath of the Passion. It has Graveborn power, which is important. Now this happens to have poison damage, which unfortunately isn't very helpful for me. If you can roll this with, the damage that's related to your spells. So here, fire or lightning, would be better. Or your dark hydras if you did darkness. So basically anything but this. So this is not rolled optimally. But what I like about this is, number one, it has that amazing ability. When you or your companions kill an enemy, that's important, either or. Companion damage increased by 20% for 15 seconds. Stacks up to 5 times. You're going to be getting this maxed out most of the time. Even on average, if you're running around, you're probably going to keep about 3 stacks. So there's going to be between 60 and 100% extra damage for companions. That's bonkers good. I like fire rate on here because, again, I like cycling through my SMGs to naturally reload and summon more pets sometimes. The fire rate is actually not bad at all on this stat. So this is overall the legendary affix kind of that you want to look for. All right, next let's talk about spells. And you're going to get 2 of them. And the golden rule is you want to get your best possible Hydra summoning spells. And when you're beginning, I recommend one of these Vigilant or one of these basically Sigil spells. And what they're going to do is you're going to notice here they cast around the owner. You're going to spawn basically 3 Hydra turrets to fire on enemies. It's instant cast. It's got a decently long cooldown, but you're going to have a lot of cooldown reduction. So every 24 seconds, and they last 6.4 seconds, which is not great, not horrible. But the idea is it's going to give you 3 stacks of Thrall buffs. It's on demand 3 extra pets. So this is a good one. You're going to be able to get them relatively early. Now for me, the second spell that I get, and this is kind of my favorite spell at this current time for summoning Hydras, is Surging Devouring Hydra. So first things first, it's a Fire and Forget. Summons a Hydra companion that will spawn another Hydra whenever an enemy damaged by it is killed. So it doesn't have to do a kill shot, which is important. Also has a small chance to spawn an additional Hydra when damaging a boss. So if you're fighting a boss that doesn't have many adds, this doesn't become useless. That's very, very important. What's key here is this has 2 spell charges, which is quite rare. But what this allows you to do is to basically spam these back to back when you're kind of engaged and you started damaging a couple enemies. So at a minimum, every time you have this recharged, it will give you 2 Hydras. Very consistently, you're gonna be able to get at least 2 more out of them, so it'll turn into 4. But sometimes when you get a bunch of enemies, I've gotten up to 6 out of this. Again, it's a little bit dependent on how many enemies you have around you. the reality is you're going to be killing things so fast, sometimes you won't get the most out of it. But I would say on average, you're going to be able to get 3 out of this, 3 to 4, which is going to be the same or better than this burgeoning vigilant sigil, for example. So if you can get this, it's best. If you only got the one that it only summons 1, which is the more common one, I would probably recommend doing 2 burgeoning vigilant sigils. However, there's one other spell that I don't have here right now, but it's basically a fireball that you channel. And if you hold the channel button, it takes about a second or so to channel fully. It will shoot 3 different fireballs, and wherever each one lands, it's going to give you 3 hydras that come and do damage. Now, the benefit of that is you get to choose where to shoot it. You can shoot it on walls because they will stick to walls. It will actually stick into certain enemies totally randomly, which is weird. Like these flying blimp enemies, sometimes they'll stick to them. But this gives you more control, but it does take a little longer to cast. I do think they do a little bit more damage, it seems like. And the difference versus obviously the Vigilant Sigil that we looked previously is the duration is pretty close. The Vigilant Sigil actually lasts a little longer, but this one is only around you. You can't control where it drops outside of around you. So in most cases, I like the flexibility of this Hydra, or even the Fireball if you got a good one. Could be a combination until you can get a 2 spell charge version of the Surging Devouring Hydra. So those are my top recommendations. If you're just leveling up, even getting a single Hydra spawn is fine. Again, golden rule, you want as many Hydras as you can out on the board. Now, when it comes to enchants, again, it's very important to note that you cannot repeat any enchants across any of your gear. They have to be unique as far as the wording. So some of the ones that are popular here, I like on spellcast, increased damage dealt by 15% for 10 seconds. Unfortunately, a very large percentage of the enchants are going to be on action skill start or while action skills are active, because we don't have action skills. Those are a total waste and useless to us. So you're going to need something like this on spellcast. Here's another one. After casting a spell, your gun and melee attacks have a 30% crit hit chance for a short duration. Because we are actually using guns in this build some, this is not useless. It's not my favorite, but it's pretty good. You may also be able to get something like this, like an elemental increase, which I have on the melee weapon here. Now, speaking of melee weapons, what we do want to get is a frying pan of the Remorseless. And so any version is mainly fine. We don't care about using this as a weapon. We care about the 2 main key things here. You're going to notice in the top area, it says reduce bullet and projectile damage from the rare by 90% while holstered. The only thing you have to do to keep this thing holstered is not melee attack. So it just gives you almost immunity to bullet and projectile damage from behind, which is huge. Now the bottom part is also important. Frying pan, while melee attacking, gain a 90% chance to reflect incoming bullets, but we're not doing that, but we are getting a 15% chance to reflect incoming bullets while it's holstered. So again, that's from any direction, 15% chance to reflect. So overall, not only are you 15% reflecting, but getting that 90% damage reduction from the rare as well. So this is the best in slot melee weapon for a non-melee build. All right, now finally, let's talk about guns. And so I have now kind of changed my mind slightly as far as how to optimize gunplay here. And I like to combine SMGs and pistols. So when you're running around, let me kind of show you here. You're going to have 2 modes. You're going to have the Thunderbolt spam. This is anytime you're fighting a boss or a mini boss, or you get a ton of burst, DPS where you may summon your minions. And all you're doing is you're holding your shoot button, and then you're basically spamming your Thunderbolts. Wherever they land, they're going to spawn more of these Hydras. They're also going to do damage to kind of get your max Hydras up as quickly as you can. And then you can technically shoot with this as well. But it's not as efficient as far as straight up shooting. Now, earlier in the match, when you're running around, you're going to want to actually, you may spawn your Hydras through the spells, but then I actually like using a gun like this that actually burns through bullets really fast, but you can also do the bullet damage. Now, this is done through SMGs, so you're going to have the same exact effect. You're not going to see any of it because there's a bug. As soon as you enchant any of these weapons, it's going to remove that line, and the line says upon reloading, throw a massive Thunderbolt, and also spawns a Hydra. Okay, and this can spawn on any of the inferior weapons, but the ones that I focus on are the pistols, because there's the fastest reload speed, 1.3 here. And then for these right here, the SMGs are my second options because they shoot the fastest and they have the second highest reload speed. So these two have 1.6, and this one also happened to be 1.4, which is quite good. Now, what you really want with the SMGs is what you see here, where it says, damage, instead of just being 1 damage, this is 44 times 5. And because of that, it consumes 2 ammo per shot. This is important because you burn through ammo faster, which means you naturally reload faster, which means without forcing a reload manually, you're going to be spawning your hydras more often. So this is big. Now again, normally what I run around when I'm just killing trash is this ice one. Ice does pretty good damage. It freezes things, so for crowd control. And you're just naturally running around and spawning the hydras pretty quickly. So, I may be running around from area to area. I just hold on to it. I have almost 1700 ammo. You're not going to run out. And you're already spawning these guys as you're spawning. So you just kind of keep your damage buff up. Now, I like to have a combination of different ones. It'll take some farming for different situations. So if you have anything armored, I do have one that is also toxic. This one happens to be a toxic beam that actually works pretty well against single targets and bosses I found for burning through that armor. Again, we have the ice one you saw, and then the final one I have the lightning. And again, it's got this little combination here of between a beam and this. You can throw any of these if you want to kind of spam them out at the beginning, but also they fire really quick, so they do generally reload naturally pretty quickly. If you can get lucky and get one of these that consume 2 ammo each on the lightning and or the toxic, well, all the power to you. Do that, please. Now, as far as your enchants, there's going to be limitations on what you want here. One that I really like on spellcast, increase elemental damage by 20%. Because you're spamming your spells a lot, you can kind of stagger those spells and keep this up pretty consistently, almost full time. Of course, you can have more specific damage. So on your frost gun, you can do frost damage. On your poison one, you can do your poison damage. The main benefit here is you're going to get 30% versus 20%. So it just depends on your RNG. And then the third buff that you can also get is the one that you're going to see on a pistol, is this one. After reloading, gain 50% companion crit hit chance, and companions regain 8% of their max health per second for 5 seconds. Now remember, all of your hydras count as companions in addition to your main kind of mini lich that floats around. So this is going to help them crit more. It's going to keep them alive, so it's helpful. Any of these are good and serviceable, though, in this build. Now, this does bring us to that pistol. Again, it has the same effect. Main thing here, it does more damage per shot, but it also has the benefit of that faster reload speed. If you're going to be doing that Thunderbolt spam, I like to use this. As far as enchants, again, this one for reload is amazing. Or if you have fire, damage upon shooting is going to be a good option as well. So those are the weapons, and again, you rotate depending on what you're fighting. When you're first starting out, having any one of these is going to be fine. The main thing is you want the Thunderbolt effect, and you want to have the Thunderbolt effect more particularly with summoning the Hydra. There are other versions. There's one version that doesn't summon anything. There's one that chains to other enemies. Neither of that is what we're looking for. So those are all of the guns that I would recommend for this build. Now, I do want to actually throw in an asterisk. I've been told that the Pixie summon one, even though it doesn't show like it's stacking the Thrall buff for us, supposedly it is. Supposedly it's a visual bug. So in those cases, you could also summon the Pixies. Now, the difference is that with Pixies, you can only have 3 Pixies maximum from the guns. While in theory, from these guns for the Hydras, I've been able to get as much as 6, I believe, from testing. Now, the Pixies do fly around, and they'll hunt down enemies, so they're more mobile, versus these here are going to be obviously not mobile. They're going to stick in the ground. Again, I'm going with the theme of Hydras for this build, so I kept all Hydras. But if you're leveling up, or if you get the Pixies and you like them, then again, it should work. Currently, visually it's not going to show them counting as stacking thrall buffs for you, but I have been told it does work. Again, I can't confirm it. I can't test it anyway to really fully confirm that, but supposedly it works, and that is an alternative as well for you as far as guns and effect. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this build. If you did, as always, make sure to drop a like. Let me know in your comments what you thought about this build overall. Do you have ways that you think this can be improved? We'd love to hear your feedback. Also, if you'd like to join me and do some chaos runs with me, I do chaos runs on a regular basis, and I love helping lower level characters. So even if you're not chaos 20 ready, or you're not even level 40, you can come to my stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/LeeroyGamingStream, join a queue and get some free runs, have a lot of fun, get a ton of loot, and have a blast with me and the other guys. Also, make sure to check out my Discord in the description below. We have a nice little growing community talking about looter shooters and RPGs. Also a great place to know exactly what's going on with me and my streaming, as well as a place where you can get your other questions answered. All right, guys, thank you so much as always for all the support, and I will see you guys in the next video.